But another question on that, on a similar front, you've mentioned negative income tax, and you also mentioned how basic income functions similarly when you really dig into the kind of the nuances of the taxing that would happen. So I wanted to ask, the more I'm thinking about it, the less clear the differences between a basic income and a negative income tax are to me. I understand, the kind of bird's eye view differences, but it seems that in either situation, there's going to be a point along the income spectrum or the wealth spectrum where people above that point have their net taxes increased and people below have their net taxes and their net income increasing. And in negative income tax, that's very explicit, right? You agree on a point, let's say 30,000 for simplicity. Anyone who earns below that gets taxed up to the level. Anyone who earns above it gets taxed down just to bring the bottom up. Whereas in basic income, there's still probably going to be a point, like you're saying, where anyone above that point on net, on aggregate, is going to be paying more than they did previously, and anyone below is going to be paying less and receiving more. So what are the real differences between the two, and what pushes you to come out in favor of basic income versus a negative income tax?
Well, basic income and negative income tax, within the movement, there's controversy about that. There are some people who think they're equivalent, and it doesn't make any difference. And those people usually tend to favor negative income tax. And there are other people who think they're very importantly different, and they tend to favor basic income. I am closer to the second camp. I know people who actually think that basic income supporters who actually think that negative income tax is counterproductive. And I'm not going to get into their arguments, but there are several things. One is that it's contained in the name, negative income tax. And that is that basic income is a negative tax just as much as anything else. And all negative taxes are income. But this one is the negative income tax is inherently tied to the negative income, to the income tax. So for every basic, and the equivalence then relies on assuming it is negative income tax finance, at least up to the break-even level. It has to be income tax finance, which is 5/6 of the program when you look at the gross cost, and 5/6 of the financing of the gross cost will have to be income taxes to make them equivalent. The rest, whether people above the break-even point are paying additional income taxes, that's another question. Now, so negative income tax is only necessarily equivalent to an income tax finance basic income, or at least 5/6 income tax finance basic income, whereas basic income could be financed by a lot of other taxes.
Right.
So you might want basic income so that you don't have to have these income taxes imposed on net recipients. It could be a VAT tax. It could be a land tax. It could be a natural resource tax. Could be a rent tax. Could be a tax on pollution. Could be taxes on global warming emissions. All kinds of things. So you might not want to do it that way. That I don't think is the biggest reason. Another reason that has to do with how it works is that basic income seems like it would be easier to administer. It seems like it because you're not paying people and taking back from them at the same time. And that sounds like it would be saving a lot of effort. But it actually, it saved virtually no effort, because it's really easy for the government to say, here's your 10,000 up and here's your 10,000 down.
Right.
No big deal. That doesn't save you very much, but you lose something that is hard for the government. In order for the government to give you the negative income tax that you're entitled to at this very moment, the day you lost your job, the day you had to leave your abusive husband, then the government needs to know how much money you're making at that point, and whether you're filing as with a spouse or whether you're not filing with a spouse. So it creates these enormous collection problems. And the government has to figure out then, how much money are you making for all your jobs? Well, what if you work 3 jobs? Is the government going to be able to figure out what's the total income of those 3 jobs, and are you still a net recipient? And how much are you net recipient? So let's say that your husband's beating you up and he's beating the kids up. So you run to a homeless shelter. And then you want to go out and you had to run. You need to go out and buy stuff yourself. And you're getting it. If you got basic income, that's going into your account every day. And it's your account separate from your spouse. But if you've got negative income tax, the negative income tax authority doesn't know you just left your husband. And say your husband makes a huge income. So they think, you call them up and you say, I need my negative income tax. And they'll say, well, it says here you filed jointly and you have an income of $200,000 a year. That you don't get negative income tax. And you say, well, I had to leave my husband and I'm in a homeless shelter. And then the guy on the phone says, well, prove that to me.
Right.
Here, fill out these forms to prove to me that you're eligible for basic income tax. Remember, this is penalty of perjury. So that is an important reason to have basic income, because we give money to the wealthy and take it back from the wealthy, not because it's so great to give money to the wealthy, but because that makes it better for the people who need it most. Basic income is better for those who need it most. And then there's another reason, is the solidarity reason, is that they say benefits for the poor are almost invariably poor benefits. Because when it's a negative income tax, you can easily go to the wealthy people and anybody above the cutoff point and say, oh, that negative income tax, that's for those other people. You don't get that. They get that. You don't benefit from that. They do, even if you're benefiting with all the leverage it gives you with your employer. They get this. Even if you've gone on and off, they get this. So we'll cut that and lower your taxes. And you're like, okay, I can support this. I don't see myself going on this thing anytime soon. They cut the negative income tax, which I don't get. Then maybe they give me a basic. They give me an income tax cut or some other tax cut. Maybe they do, and if they don't, they only took it away from those other people. But if it's a basic income, then you're getting it and everybody else is getting it. And the person who's trying to attack it has to say, I'm going to take away your basic income and everybody else's basic income, and then I'm going to lower your taxes, and your taxes are going to go down more than your basic income goes down. And you're going to say, well, how do I know that? You say that. I know I'm losing my basic income. You're taking my basic income and you say my taxes are going to go down even more? How long is that going to last before you raise the taxes back up and I'm just without a basic income? So it creates this much larger constituency for basic income.
Yeah.
And it also, people see that it benefits them from their lives. They see, oh yeah, when I was out of work for a while and that basic income was still coming in. I hadn't even had time to apply for anything, or I wasn't eligible for unemployment insurance. I got out of school or something. I had this basic income. That was good for me. You get more people exposed to it, people who wouldn't necessarily apply for the negative income tax. And not only to say, even, say with the negative income tax, the person would have to fill out a form to show that their income is low, but also that do we really need this person in this crisis that just lost their job or just became disabled or just had a mental health crisis or just had to run away from an abusive spouse? Do we really want this person filling out a bunch of forms to say, I need my negative income tax now? Or we just want the basic income to be
right?
there?
Yeah, I hear 3 kind of themes. I want to pull them out because I hadn't thought of them. They're really good responses. So 3 reasons that you just kind of went over for why we might prefer a universal basic income to negative income tax. The first was that a universal basic income is more open to a diversity of funding sources. And given all the controversy about funding something like this, it seems a virtue to be open to as many funding sources as possible rather than pinning the burden on income taxes specifically.
Or pinning 5/6 of it to negative
right,
to tax.
The majority portion there. The second one, and this is something I really resonate with, is that a negative income tax, because of all the filing that would be required to monitor people's income from which to determine how much they are entitled to, would render the program more dependent upon a centralized structure. It would have all kinds of externalities, like you mentioned, with people who might need things or would benefit greatly from immediate access, which they cannot have because they